For most people who backyard wrestled, the dream was to go pro. I went to wrestling school right after college, but as fate would have it, I didn't finish. So what happened? This is how I failed wrestling school. I backyard wrestled for 7 years, and by the end, I thought I knew everything. I thought I had everything figured out. I thought wrestling school was just a formality and that I would take to training like a duck to water. And I quickly found out that nothing could be further from the truth. The first major issue I had was breaking bad habits I'd built up and relearning how to wrestle. I'd gotten set in my ways, and after doing things a certain way for 7 years, breaking that muscle memory and starting from scratch was incredibly difficult. Bumps weren't so bad, but things like a collar and elbow tie-up, working the left side of your opponent, having good footwork, those were all things I struggled with because I had become so used to how we did things in the backyard, and I'd built up that muscle memory. I knew that a lot of what I was doing wasn't right, so I went in knowing that I would have to change a lot. But my body was programmed to do things a certain way, and reprogramming myself was not as easy as I thought it was going to be. The second issue I had was that I had lost my support circle. Poe, Kid Crush, and myself had been clicked up for years. We ran CCW together, we went to indie shows together, and we checked out different wrestling schools together. We created this support circle for ourselves that disappeared when I finally went to wrestling school. We were all supposed to go together, but all of a sudden they both had excuses why they couldn't go. So I ended up going by myself. Every car ride home, I'm exhausted. My back and my neck are killing me. I got bruises under my arm from hitting the ropes, and I got no one in the car to hype me up. I got no one saying, "Oh man, did you see that? Oh, they ain't ready for us." All I had was an empty car with a broken radio, alone with my thoughts. All I could think was, this kind of sucks. The third major issue was that I didn't pick the best school. We had looked at a bunch of schools in the area. Big Time Wrestling, which is where Bailey eventually came from. We looked at Pro Wrestling Iron, which was our top pick until they closed. We looked at APW, which was featured in Beyond the Mat. Finally, we decided on a place called Devil Mountain Wrestling. The only reason we chose them was because they were by far the cheapest option. They were a fraction of what everyone else was charging. Well, guess what? You get what you pay for. Devil Mountain didn't even really have a school. It was a ring in the booker's backyard. Hey, at least I felt at home. But the training wasn't great. I got the sense that they didn't really have a curriculum and were just kind of making things up on the fly. I was also the only student. That's never a good sign. They said they had another class of more advanced students and that I was the only beginner, but at all the DMW shows I worked, I never saw any of these other students. The other problem was that with the ring being in the backyard, they didn't train when it was raining. So my first month there, I was only able to train 2 or 3 times. And I knew that not being able to get those reps in and not being able to train more was going to hinder me and prevent my body from getting conditioned to the rigors of pro wrestling. The training flat out sucked, and I had buyer's remorse pretty much from day one. I tried to stick it out though, but ultimately this fourth issue is what derailed my dreams of going pro. I had dieted and exercised for 6 weeks before starting wrestling school. I wanted to make sure I was in the best shape of my life to give myself the best possible chance for success. And I very quickly found out that the best shape of my life was still nowhere near the shape I needed to be in to be a pro wrestler. Famously, I had injured my neck backyard wrestling, and that injury would come back to haunt me when I was training. When you take a bump, you're supposed to tuck your chin so that way you protect your head from getting slammed into the mat. Well, my neck would stiffen up to the point where I physically couldn't tuck my chin. And with every bump, my head was taking just as much of the impact as the rest of my body. Not only that, but my back and my ankles would also give me chronic issues after years of abuse. Almost a decade of throwing myself at the ground backyard wrestling destroyed my body and beat me down to the point where, despite my best efforts, my body just wasn't holding up to the training. And ultimately, I was forced to walk away. Looking back, I definitely regret blowing my one chance at turning pro. If I could do it all over again, I would absolutely pick a better school, one that was preferably inside, and get some real proper training. I also should have seen a physical therapist about my neck and try to sort out these issues as much as possible. Maybe even take a year or two to really get in shape, fix my body, let that backyard wrestling muscle memory fade away, and even give Kid Crush and Poe time to get their stuff in order so we could all go together. Of course, this is all hindsight. I had to play the hand I was dealt. God had a plan for me, and everything that happened was exactly what was supposed to happen. I've gotten to do some amazing things in my lifetime, and none of that would have happened if I was actually able to go pro. But seriously, if you want to go pro, don't cheap out, pick a good school. I cannot stress that enough.